Submission.
Oh fuck! Is it only recording my side? Can you say something?
Hello? Yeah, can you hear me? Hello?
Give me
Hello,
one second.
hello.
I have an idea. Or you know what? I'm gonna figure this out for later. This is probably not important for the first podcast, but next time we'll do this. All right, what were you saying? We were talking about
I think talking about the podcast itself, like talking about maybe just starting with that. Cause like, I mean, remember, like, I mean, let's put this point in time, right? Like we were at COVID, or I'm sorry, Karen's big thing. And it was like the first like big social gathering we had been in a while. And also the first time we started to like kind of say, oh, we're starting a podcast. And like, you know, there's a thing that happens when you start to tell people what you're going to do, right? And yeah, I think that the last thing I was just talking about, like, what is that automaticity of something that, you know, you and I, you know, we come into this with very, I think, organic, like pretty like fluid expectations, but there's an automaticity of like expectation even, or like prescription of what a podcast is, because like it's recording now, right? Like it's like you know how many times we've talked, how many experiences we've shared, how much quality like things that could have gone into the world or spun up in some kind of way, but this is the first time it's like crystallized in a way, you know?
yeah, it's kind of crazy like how easy it is to like make a podcast now. Because if you think about, you know, like growing up, like, you know, when we hear someone talking on the radio or something like that, for me, that was always like kind of like a big deal. Yo, that guy's famous. He's on the radio. But now, me and you can just bullshit and then just like click the record button and post that somewhere. And, you know, maybe we don't get a lot of listeners. Maybe we do. Or maybe we get canceled. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. But I think it's kind of cool just to, you know, be able to do that. And I think earlier when you're talking about like the art of conversation, the art of like almost like a flowing conversation. I was like really worried that as soon as we click the record button, me and you will start talking and it'll be all fucking weird. And we'll literally just be like, you know, because once you hit record and once like there's a camera on you, or once there's like almost like an expectation, you know, once we told our friends, hey, like we're gonna do a podcast. I know none of our friends like give a shit in terms of like, you know, whether this like does well or doesn't. They probably want to like listen to it anyways, you know, just on some level, especially if we have a good conversation. But I was worried that it would feel weird, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, man. I have a lot of thoughts on that, and I think that where our personalities are similar, and it's almost like we're just born out of necessity, that we are always constantly, like as you put it recently, like catching up, right, and working live in the moment because of the, you know what I mean, like we're not pre-planners in that sense, so we're always live and expected to perform and improvise and adapt now, right? And I think that for a lot of, we can't take that for granted. For a lot of people it's not like that, right, to be able to just like do it. And so that's why I think that like it's interesting. I don't think there is as much apprehension because we've actually been practicing it our entire life, you know, like we're actually not able to not practice it. So
Yeah, I think
yeah.
dude, I think when it comes to like conversations and conversation flow, I think there's certain things that can only be achieved in real time. Um, you know, like when people talk about flow, right? Like I've tried to write before, and I know you practice writing, um, because I read on your IGs. Those are like pretty dope. But when I write, it's so much harder than talking. My ideas when I'm talking, especially when I have a good conversation, they feel like they just like, you know, one, two, and three, and you can just kind of like spitball the ideas. Like one idea just like fills in after another, and my brain just does this thing where it just keeps going and keeps going. Sometimes I ramble. I'm probably rambling right now, but a lot of times when I'm writing, there's like this, you know, like it's like the voice in your head when you're writing. You're like, wait, that doesn't sound right. Delete, delete, delete,
Mm-hmm.
delete, and then write a new sentence, and then next thing you know, you spent the last 30 minutes trying to write like this one idea that if you were talking to another person would have been out of your mouth within 30 seconds. And if the person didn't get it, you would be able to tell by looking at them, you know, they look confused. Then you fire another one out in 30 seconds. If they don't get it, you fire another. And then, you know, within less than 2 minutes, you get the whole idea from your head into their head. And the flow of the conversation keeps going. The next idea keeps going. They shoot an idea out and it just goes back and forth. And I don't know if you can create that. I mean, I think that's why speaking and the art of conversation can be so special compared to other forms of communication.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you bring up an important, like, the gap between like what you say and then what you write, like conceptually and logically, it is not that big, right? It's like it's written, it is verbal communication, right? You're just moving from the medium of speech to the medium of like written form. But man, that gap is so big, right? Like it's one of the biggest technological advancements of all time by far.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's
By far.
Right, to be able to preserve that. But really the gap is much bigger when you actually try to practice the same fluency. And you know, not to always bring this back to myself, but you're just again reinvigorating so much of this like hypothesis that I had about communication and speech. One, it's like by far the most important skill of all time, right? By far, like if it's not the top of your hierarchy of like things to be like massively proficient at, that pays the most massive dividends in every area of your life, then you're wrong. Like, I don't know how to say that, right? But yeah, that was why I started to do. I asked the same question, and that's why I started to poke into Reddit. And I would time box. I would go there. I would go through the new queue, and I would go through, and I would just be like, you have to pump out like as many comments as you can, you know, and you have to do it fast, but you have to be able to nail it, like, because Redditors are fickle, right? And like an upvote, downvote, it's data, right? It tells you, I'm not trying to run for a politician or be a demagogue, right? Demagogue being like those people who are really good at swaying the masses, but it's like Trump, right? Like if you can, like Reddit is a metric. Like if you can like quickly spit out something that passes your internal logical, like ethical test of like, you know, I'm speaking a truth here, but put in the right amount of rhetorical flares in there and structure, right? In a 3-sentence hit, like that's, and you're writing it, you're not speaking at that point. I found that such a good like vehicle exercise machine, right, for writing, that I couldn't find anywhere else. And I know that you took that like in-depth class that put a big structural framework around like improving writing. But I'm curious what you think about that, because that was, while I was super intrigued by your class and I haven't been through it, that was my like own like organic personal you know, step into that world. And I think, yeah, like we should all be just like, you go to the exercise room and you bang out reps on this machine. Like there needs to be a machine that just bangs out like your ability to write. Yeah, I don't know.
Dude, if you think about it, you know how we're trying to do this MVP podcast, and we're just like, all right, what's the easiest way to start a podcast that takes like zero effort? Because if it takes any type of effort at all, me and you probably, you know, we might not get to the starting line. And we're like, okay, buy a microphone, get on Zoom, start talking. And I assume at some point we're probably going to post it somewhere and probably get some feedback from our friends. And then next week we're going to be like, hey, so-and-so said we should talk about this. Or so-and-so said that this was actually pretty interesting. So-and-so said this was kind of boring, or whatever the case may be. And then we're going to slowly iterate our podcasts on a week-to-week basis. So, you know, maybe after, you know, 5 iterations, maybe 20 iterations, maybe 100 iterations, we might have something that that feels good. You know what I mean? That not just based on our opinion, but based on the opinion of the people that listen to this. And then hopefully by then more people might want to listen to the podcast. I know that's not the end goal, but it's just like a cool kind of experiment. But going back to the Reddit thing, that's literally the MVP of writing. And Reddit has an engine that gives you direct feedback like right away. It's like you write like, you know, you go into like an Ask Reddit or whatever subreddit that you like, and you find like a problem that you kind of not have an answer for, but you know that you can give an opinion to. I don't know, you probably spend 10 or 15 minutes, you know, writing a paragraph, maybe editing it, and then just firing it out there. And then within like in real time, you check back later that day, you either have, you know, 20 upvotes, or you have a bunch of downvotes, or it's like somewhere in the middle. And then you can kind of see, oh wait, that actually hit, or that actually didn't hit. So I think that's super dope that you have this, I don't know, that you found this like MVP writing system, you know, to get
Yeah.
immediate feedback on, and I'm guessing like you know, like a one paragraph chunk or like a one sentence, like whatever, that's like the minimum you're probably gonna write, you know what I mean? Like a response to a Reddit post. You know, it's not a blog post where, you know, it takes like a commitment where you have to like, you know, come up with an idea and like, you know, see it all the way through, probably get it edited and stuff like that. And but I mean, because I mean, like one paragraph or one sentence, that's probably the minimum you're gonna write. And then once you post it there, that's the minimum like feedback you're gonna get. But it's pretty good feedback, you know, that karma system on Reddit. I mean, it probably gives you enough data to know which one of your ideas suck and which one of your ideas are good, and how to make them sound good too. So I think that's really cool. And when you're asking about the writing class I took, I mean, the idea in the writing class that I took was essentially that. I mean, the guy came up with this, I guess it's like a structure around like having your own blog, but it's the same idea. And he used Twitter almost as the feedback mechanism. But there's a lot. Don't get me wrong. It was a good class if you kind of have a blog um, and you can, you have to be able to make it through at least one feedback loop for it to be worth it. So for instance, like if to send out one blog post, that's actually like, if you've never done one before, that's actually a lot of work. It's probably similar to like writing like an essay in college, but then also posting it for the internet to see. So it feels like there's like a little more pressure there. And so if you do that enough times, if you get through like 50 blog posts and you get feedback from like Twitter and like whatever mechanisms that he recommends you do that for, then yeah, you're probably gonna be pretty damn good at it. But it's getting to the starting line each week. It's a lot harder than going on Reddit, you know, finding like a few things to write about and then just writing about them and just firing it out into the world. So I think it's super dope that you kind of have that system for Reddit.
Yeah, man. No, for sure. And it's a hierarchy, right? Like everything builds upon each other, which, you know, with the blog being a little bit higher up in that ladder. And so I think uh it's always good, I think, especially in companies. I think the discipline in my world, we call it content strategy, you know, for any type of content you're trying to put out as a brand or as a company, you need to have a strategy around it, from like how you're intaking it, how you're processing it, who's going to write it, but also like the idea of a cadence or rhythm, right? Like there's going to be, maybe you tweet every day, but bi-weekly, like more bigger, like a video comes out, right? And so like they should kind of all build, like, I think, structure themselves. But yeah, man, just funny thing, you just reminded me of some funny moments in Reddit. Like I used to like be big in the Game of Thrones subreddit. I think I probably had like 2,000 karma from that Game of Thrones itself, because when it started going downhill, like, you know, I'm a natural critic and I try not to be like that annoying contrarian. Like I'm a Redditor, right? I've been Redding since 2008. Like it's like, as much as I know it's a stereotype, and to not be like that Reddit, like, well, you know, like well, actually, um, when Game of Thrones started going downhill, you know, and I was like, man, is anyone else seeing this? Like, this is awful, you know. And I would try to write like little critiques after the episodes came out and to see if anyone else agreed with it. And yeah, some of those got hit like 700 karma. Like I would put screen clips of like the fight scene and why it was so shit and like why this character doing this wasn't cool. And but anyway, just good memories of that. Which I actually don't have because went back and deleted all my Reddit comments.
Why did you do that?
Well, one, every once in a while, I feel I don't know. It's part of, I think, my internal neuroticism. I always feel like this needs to sometimes like reinvent or shed the old. And then also like there was this like privacy bit that I started to worry about because I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but like my social media, there was one point where I decided it was too much work to maintain multiple personas, especially because I work in corporate and office, right? I was like, I can't do it. So I went through and like I said, all right, you're gonna try to be one person across everything. And I'm friends with coworkers. I'm friends with like some bosses on Facebook and whatever. And I was like, all right, let's just do a low pass and make sure that all of your like shit is like, okay. And now push that boundary of like professionalism, personal. And when I started to do that and looking across all of my accounts, I got a little bit worried about my Reddit account. So I found this like script. It's actually it's not easy actually to delete all your Reddit comments. Like you have to like find some random guy's GitHub, download a script, like I don't know, and run it. I mean, at least a couple years ago, I did like 4 years ago, and just delete it. And so, and also this is back when I was getting into Buddhism for the first time. So I was like, oh my God, you're attached to this. Like this is like so much of you and your history and all these comments that you were like, oh man, that one got so much karma. Like, oh, wasn't that a good like post, right? And I was like, oh man, that's a red flag. Like you really care about this. And so, it was like, oh, okay, well, it's a win-win. Let's do it for the privacy thing. Let's do it for the reinvention, and let's do it for the just practice this inconsequential letting go. Which man, it's funny because even telling you about this right now, like it's like a roller coaster because first I was like reminiscent and nostalgic and like, oh, wasn't that a fun time? I wish I could show Hack that like, send him that comment and we'd have a good laugh about it. But I actually don't have it. And like, sometimes I go back to my history and it deletes all your comments, but it keeps your karma. So like you look at my account, it's like, oh, the karma's there. And I'm just every once in a while, like out of habit, click my history and I'm just like, oh, there's nothing there. This is like kind of weird. So
that's kind of there's a lot of jumping off points on what you just said. I'm not sure what the best one is. I'm just gonna pick one.
Yeah. This is what we do to each other, man. We're like, here's the next deck of cards. Pick one.
Yeah, there has to be a way for me to like remember these jumping off points because I feel like there's a lot, and I might pick the wrong one, so I might want to like come back. I'm gonna forget for sure, but whatever.
Yeah.
When you talk about multiple personas, I think that's an interesting thing. Because I think you're aware of it. You're like, okay, well, my digital identity on Reddit is this. My digital identity, to my family is, or my I guess my identity to my family is this, or at work is this, or my identity on IG is like this is what I'm putting off into the digital space. So somebody that reads all my Reddit comments are gonna think this about me, or on IG they're gonna think this about me. And I'm guessing maybe it's probably a good idea. So I don't know if you wrote anything that might get you canceled nowadays, since that kind of picked up a little bit of steam in the last year and a half or so. But I don't think when me and you were growing up, that wasn't as much of an issue to understand that you have multiple personas across like different mediums even. I want to just use like a very broad stroke, but I know it's more fine than this because there's different platforms. There's Facebook, there's Reddit, there's IG, and there's podcasting now, and there's YouTube and stuff like that. There's streaming. And so how you come off on each of those platforms can be completely different because you have different audiences and you're doing different things on those platforms. But let's just talk about digital identity and just like your actual like in-person identity. And it's dope because me and you know each other like on a personal level. Like no matter what you write on IG or on Reddit or whatever, when I read it, like it comes filtered through the identity of, yo, I know Steven, he's my boy. I've known this dude for like more than a decade and a half or whatever. So it comes filtered through that. But a lot of people, when you put work out there, when you write something and fling it out on IG and it gets shared and someone reads it, and even in the social circle of someone you're actually going to meet that we know, that's going to get filtered through that identity first, you know, through the picture of you fighting Muay Thai, you know what I mean, or through the picture of you riding elephants or hanging out with elephants in Thailand, or through the picture of whatever the case may be. That gets filtered through that. And then when they meet you in person, then they're like, oh yeah, this is the Muay Thai fighter, Steven, that rides a motorcycle, that does this and this. For me, like, you were Steven before you did Muay Thai, before you did, you know, before you had a motorcycle, before you like did any of this stuff. So like, I don't know, it hits different when you have like, when you know their personal like story, their personal identity. I guess I'm like completely rambling now, but to take it back to what I was trying to talk about, I don't think a lot of people in this time even are aware that there's like these two identities, and it really affects almost like your life experience to understand that there's two of them. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's like what you're putting out on IG, that's gonna affect how people treat you, and how people treat you is gonna affect your life experience. I don't know, and I think a lot of times people aren't as purposeful with that as they could be. My strategy has always been to just avoid that shit, like completely. Like, you know, even coming up through poker, a lot of my poker buddies, like, you know, they were like pretty well known in the online poker world. But like I myself, and I think Z on some level too, but primarily myself, I value my privacy. So I just kind of like laid low. Even like in the poker forums, like, you know, when something would come up where I want to like say something about it, I'll just be like, nah, it's probably not worth it. And just kind of like, eventually it just goes away no matter what it is. And then, you know, you know, it's like zero effort to not say anything and then just like keep living or whatever. But I don't know if that's the best strategy. It was just the most low effort thing for me to do. But yeah, I don't know if that was even something, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. So I'm gonna set a ground rule for us before we go forward, and
Sure.
it's honestly one that I set with my close friends or people I vibe with, regardless of podcasts, which is we don't need any apologies or any disclaimers, right? I think that oftentimes people like us go out into the real world and like a lot of things don't hit or catch because we have so much to say and like it's so divergent. And I think this is the one space where we just shut down that secondary voice, right? You talk a lot about as you're writing, there's like a secondary critic that's automatic. It's whenever you're doing something new. And while with speech, like, I mean, you can say that, and I know that it doesn't actually affect you. Like, you know, other people, if they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm rambling, I know they're like, they might be a little bit more affected by that secondary voice. But I think we should represent, like, not like diminishing that voice in this space for anyone who's listening, for ourselves, you know, like putting that ground rule down. So, yeah. And
Yeah, I
by the
appreciate that,
way,
man.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, honestly, and this is sincere, you never go on any kind of tangent in which I'm just like, oh God, dude, like, come on, like, just come on, like, you know, never. So, a lot of good stuff there. So I agree with what you're saying, but my brain naturally is going to try to find exceptions, right? Or counterpoints, which is also kind of funny because I think that sometimes people I vibe with, like, I think that's the difference where I can like say something and it doesn't mean that I'm like arguing against or discounting what you're saying. I'm actually just thinking out loud with you and inviting you to like
Mhm.
think with me. But to your point, I think that's absolutely true. Like, you know, this digital layer, you know, it has like basically times two, right? Has created this whole level, like alternate like existence. But I wonder if there are certain people who were always that to some degree always experience that, like you said, famous people or people who are in job roles like sales or club promoters, or that always had like multiple personas all the time, and they were aware of it, right? Like people who are like social engineering types. Um, and now it's like we're all invited into that same space that, you know, before those people are there because I assume they're just kind of naturally inclined for that and they found themselves there. But now, whether or not you're natural or not, you're in that space. And another thing I thought about when you mentioned it, it's almost like, you know, that feeling, and I don't want to say everyone had this feeling, but you know, adolescence in high school, you were like hyper aware of people's perceptions of you and who you were to each person, right? Like you were just so image conscious, and you were just so afraid that like one thing you did would like shift the needle so far. Like, oh my God, they think I'm an idiot now. Oh my God. Like, it's just like, it would just like totally turn someone's perception of you and that like thing, because, you know, your identity is much more fragile than informing. But it's almost like now we're all stuck in high school mode, like forever, unless you like kind of come out of it, whether intentionally or naturally. I think age does do that to you naturally. You come to peace with that, digital or not digital. But yeah, super interesting.
Maybe
And
I'll
then
show. Go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were.
oh no, I was just gonna say, like, I'm just gonna put this out there because every time I talk about this, the nature of self always comes like follows and like right at the end of the digital conversation. Like, so I just wanted to throw that out there as like a queue up. But you were saying something? Yeah.
Did you want to just quickly say what the nature of self is? I don't know if you can do it in one sentence or less, but I'm just kidding. That was go ahead.
Yeah.
But
Well,
you
and
got that. Yeah,
it
we got
jumps
that.
into
Put it out there.
yeah, I mean, it jumps into artificial intelligence too, right? That the value we put on like self as just like this arbitrary continuity of memories and experience, like experiential vignettes, like, you know, um, as like we almost measure the value of self by the integrity of it, right? Of like I'm the most important because I have the most continuity, the most fidelity, the most predictability around this set of like memories, and I experience it firsthand, of course. Um, but when you think about like that as a measure of any like as a measure, it starts to get interesting because like this phone like is more me than me. Oh, we have a 10-minute warning. It's only 40 minutes.
Okay.
We might have to keep this going, but like this is Black Mirror world, obviously, right? So at this point, Black Mirror is popular. I'm not saying anything that's like super cool, but this phone like knows my health data, what I've eaten, where I've been for the past like 10 years, down to the GPS coordinate, the pictures, my friend, like it has like the fidelity of self of Steven in here is so like you could make a new version of Steven off of this phone better than you can make one off of like almost this brain. Like this brain is so much more, I mean, the brain's more powerful, but it's not as structured. It doesn't index the same way. It's not, you know, I'm not gonna say that you can make the same personality maybe, but I don't know. Anyway, I'm running with that track. I think that kind of fizzled a bit, but
No, dude,
that's my bit on
there's
it.
a lot. There's definitely a lot in the phone, and just to take it a step back. I think I had something to say, but let me see if I could dig it backwards a little bit. Earlier when you were talking about I guess like digital identity, I wanna get back into that because I think
Yeah.
that's like a pretty like there's like a lot of meat there, you know what I mean? And like honestly, like this whole podcast could be about that, just because I think people maybe I'll show my age here. But you know, when I grew up in high school, when you were talking about people being hyper aware of like, you know, like when you're like in ninth grade and I don't know, maybe you said something in front of the girl you liked, and maybe it didn't hit the right way, and then you're thinking about it for the next, like, I don't know, like 4 days or something stupid. And she probably thought about it for like 4 seconds, or maybe didn't even notice your ass because, you know, I mean, the girl that you like probably didn't notice you, so whatever, right? But now you're thinking about it for like 4 days. And in high school, I didn't have Facebook. And I know that probably sounds crazy, but I don't know. Facebook probably started closer to the end of high school for you, right? Maybe like college.
Yeah.
That was like
Yeah.
back when you needed to have a college account to get a Facebook account. So
Right.
yeah, so you went through high school like probably in the same type of like atmosphere as I did. But imagine if like, and the thing is, and this is just like literally just, you can have anxiety without Facebook, like literally just like human interaction. You have anxiety over like this little like bullshit interaction that probably didn't matter at all. But now imagine you have Facebook, and then like, I don't know, you make a post and then you only get like, I don't know, 10 likes, and someone else made a post and they got like 13 likes or something. Now there's like, and you know how the human mind works. The human mind's literally like this pattern recognition machine. So it's gonna see that pattern and it's like, oh wait, like I only got 10 likes on my post. That guy got 13 likes. Oh, the person that likes me didn't like my post. Does that mean they hate me? Oh my God, they don't like me. And then like, you know, and you know how that thinking, you can literally, and that's just like one example, you know, and that's only Facebook. People probably don't even use Facebook like that anymore, but now you got IG, you got Twitch streams, you got all sorts of bullshit. You know, maybe you start a YouTube or a podcast. Maybe we post this podcast and we only get like, you know, 5 listens, and you know, it's maybe your girlfriend listens to it, maybe one of my close friends listen to it, and maybe my mom accidentally clicks on it or something like that, and we're like, oh my God, like, you know, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like there's no the mind doesn't know how to separate, like, you know, it's a pattern recognizing machine, and it doesn't know how to separate like man, you might have to help me finish the sentence here, because I know there's something there, but the digital identity is something that if you're not aware of or not intentional about, it could really fuck you up. Because that can cause a lot of anxiety, and you don't know why. You know what I mean? That can, imagine it. I mean, just imagine having something like Facebook in high school. I know a lot of people don't have to imagine. I'm literally showing my age here, but it's, yeah, I don't know. I think we're lucky to not have it and just kind of be in this world, and then have it a little bit later when we're like a little older. Because I can only imagine as a middle schooler just having this social media, you know, stuff, and not understanding how the signals even got there in the first place, or what the signals mean, and then interpreting it the way that you think it means, and being totally wrong, but having that wrong affect your like emotional state on a day-to-day, even minute-to-minute basis sometimes. That's like kind of like
podcast idea. We need to interview somebody who's going through that right now. Like, we need to interview a high schooler.
Do you like someone that's like anxiety through digital media? Because what if they come on the podcast and we don't get a lot of listens, and they're like, oh my God, it's because I don't know, A, B, and C, and I'm like, nah, bro.
No, it's gonna be a self-aware high schooler, right?
Oh,
like,
self-aware high schooler.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, they're not in it. They're like aware of the thing that they're in, but they have enough insight. Like, they are you're still subject to any system you're a part of, right?
Right.
Like, just like we are, like we're pretty, like, I think we have the fortitude to like built up against this stuff, but it's still there. We just like it still hits us. So I think that I think interview, like, podcast idea, just I think something that we could very much bring into our demographic, and that I'm just honestly just personally interested in is like the youth, like, you know, like I always thought like I was smarter than the old people when I was going through school, and like technology, like things are so different, there's no way they understand. And like I think we are at like an inflection point in our own journey. I see your eyes, are you looking at the upgrade timer thing?
Yeah, dude, I actually love having the timer, because I think for people like me and you, the timer helps. So I do want to keep this Zoom 45-minute account thing, like at least for the first few podcasts, because I think that's a good amount. And if we know there's a timer, I'm It's totally.
I think that's a great idea. So we got 3 minutes. We're gonna call it 3 minutes. We're gonna do 4 minutes. We're gonna go to the Zoom restriction.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's what we should do, and I think
so too.
I feel great about it.
Okay. So we got 3 minutes and counting.
Yo, dude, honestly, like if
you know what we need to do? We need to have a overlay or a thing that just like as soon as the Zoom countdown starts, it's like it's that part of the podcast has begun.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude. Zoom free account and get a microphone, just start talking bullshit, and then
that should be the podcast name, Zoom free account.
Yeah, Zoom free account. Hell yeah, dude. Yo, I do like the idea of getting in high school, dude. One time, Mimi and Vicky called me a boomer, and I don't get offended, but that fucking offended me. Like I was like, what would you say? But I mean, obviously I didn't like show it, but I was like, yo, whoever we bring on this podcast, we're gonna be like, yo, why would I want to go on this boomers podcast?
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I think it'll be cool. I think I am curious, man. Like, you know, imagine having like growing up in Facebook in a time when you had a Facebook as an elementary school, you know, person, or like if you had a cell phone, like people don't go out without their cell phones, like kind of like what you were saying before. So you're always in that digital world, and it's hard to see the world that you're in, having been in it all the time. But if you I think it was lucky for us because at least we can remember a time when we didn't have cell phones. At least we can remember a time when, you know, you go outside and play with your friends or whatever. You can remember a time before the blanket of social media, the blanket of digital identity kind of like enveloped itself around the world. And now we're in it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think being aware of it is a good thing.
Exactly. Being aware, but also using it, leveraging it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that my thing about the nuanced take on that is because like one of the things that I always reconcile with is that like we're hippies, but we're also like pragmatists and utilitarians, right? Like look at this 1 minute thing. Like I think that people should be able to divest their self-worth and protect their self-worth away from that, but at the same time realize that still matters. Social influence matters. Mm-hmm. Where you rank up, if your clout, all that stuff, still something you need to be intentional about and aware of and build up, like, and try to amass, right? So you can use it for good, right? Being popular is good. Like, don't be like, oh, I'm so against that and like anti-society. Like, yes, but don't make yourself feel bad about like you didn't get enough plus points. But ask yourself, maybe how do I get more plus points? Like, not in a ego way, but like, yeah, I need more plus points so I can continue to do more things with my plus points.
Right, you get more influence that way. You
get more influence.
Yo, it's actually pretty stressful that timer like was counting down and it turned to less than 1 minute.
It's the worst, man.
Yeah, it was like 30 seconds, like, you know, 1 minute countdown, and it just changed to less than 1 minute. So we're about to cut off any time here. But I think this is a great podcast, first starting conversation. I feel pretty good about it.